Hello and thanks for staying on LN 24/7. This is Politics Now. My name is Morno Balagbobo, and we've got quite a show for you today. Our focus on today's show will be on the June 12th annulment, seeking justice versus forgetting the past. And this is coming from some of the thoughts shared by former head of state Ibrahim Babangida at his book launch. There's been a lot of reactions, and tonight we'll be focusing on some of those reactions. So let's take you through our running talking points. Our talking points will focus on the clarity over June 12th annulment, IBB story versus the story of so many other persons who were actually alive at that time and participated in the election, and of course all the activities that followed the aftermath of the elections. Secondly, we'll talk about elite complicity and moral responsibility, and finally calls to prosecute IBB and the talks of posthumous swearing in for MKO. Our guest today on the show is a revered journalist who has countless times spoken with the man we're talking about, of course, our former head of state, Ibrahim Babangida, talking about Mr. Simon Reef Musa, public affairs analyst, former editor at the Leadership News. He's also a columnist and media consultant. Away from that, we'll also focus on the relevance of CSOs and NGOs. Talking points will focus on allegations of terrorism, threat to funding, tackling USAID exit, and a need for transparency and regulation. Our guest today on the show is Arome Agei. He's a public policy analyst. He's an experienced development professional and has worked in NGOs, think tanks, CSOs, and youth movements, and also managed large consortiums of CSOs, youth groups, and media organizations in Africa. We'll be back to break it down for you shortly. To stay with us. All right, glad to have you back once again. Nigeria's former military head of state, Ibrahim Babangida, says he regrets the annulment of the June 12, 1993 presidential election, 25 years after the event. He stated this in his speech at the launch of his autobiography, A Journey in Service, in Abuja a few days back. And there's been a lot of reactions to the summations and some of the things he described about what happened, his own personal account. And of course, in that book, he took responsibility for cancelling the exercise in which the late Moshood Abiola of the Social Democratic Party, SDP, defeated the late Bashir Tofa of the National Republican Convention, NRC. And Babangida's junta announced the annulment of the poll days after stopping the Electoral Commission's final collation of the results. The annulment threw Nigeria into a political impasse, forcing Babangida to hand over to his hand-picked interim government 8 weeks later on the 26th of August. Now, the IBB's book launch was, of course, attended by a lot of dignitaries. Some were shocked to find out that Tinubu, whom IBB imprisoned, graced the occasion, while other ethnic groups confessed that it was because of their dealings with IBB that they were there at the event. Well, Tinubu said at the event that General Ibrahim Babangida, without you, I'm reading in quote what he said, people like me wouldn't be in politics. He says you inspire some of us. And also President Bola Tinubu says that the president had a golden opportunity to make history by inaugurating Abiola, but missed it. But is that enough justification for his presence at that particular meeting or during the book launch? Now, away from that, the chairman of the Senate Committee on the Southeast Development Commission is one of those in politics that has reacted, and he has urged President Bola Tinubu to posthumously swear in Chief Moshood Abiola as the duly elected president. And he also called for the inclusion of Abiola's presidential portrait alongside Nigeria's past leaders. He further stated that such recognition would heal and compensate the family and the nation at large. Now, he also called on the former president, Badamasi Babangida, to name the key actors behind the annulment and, of course, the widely regarded election, of course, which was said to be the most freest and fairest in Nigeria's history. And also, the Resource Center for Human Rights and Civic Education has urged the government to prosecute the former military leader for his role in annulling the June 12th election. Now, Christ condemned the recent admission by the president, then head of state, that Chief Abiola won the election, calling it a self-incriminating statement warranting immediate legal action. And the group argued that the annulment undermined Nigeria's democratic process, leading to widespread violence, loss of lives, long-term political instability. And they highlighted the consequences of the annulment, which includes mass arrests, brutal repression of protesters, deaths of pro-democracy activists. It's also cited the cases of Chief MKO Abiola, who died in custody under suspicious circumstances, and also journalist Delegiwa, whose unresolved assassination epitomizes past state abuses. The organization also noted the economic waste stemming from the annulled election, arguing that resources spent on it deepened Nigeria's corruption and inefficiency. Now, to react to some of these comments, Special Advisor to the President, Bayo Nanuga, has said that contrary to ex-Vice President Yemi Osibanjo's claim that former military leader did not torment Tinubu during the military era, Osibanjo made the remark reviewing Babangida's autobiography, and he recalled how Tinubu, then a senator, resisted the dissolution of the Senate following the annulment of the June 12th election. Now, there's just quite a lot to unpack. Mr. Reef, our guest, is with us in the studio. Thank you, sir, once again for being with us.
Thank you so much.
The pleasure is mine, and it's good
to be with you.
Yeah, the pleasure is also mine. I'm very interested about this conversation because you've interacted with IBB. So let's start with your reaction from the book, because you've had hours of one-on-one conversation. This was not like an interview, like man to man. You've had interactions with the former head of state, IBB, and then you saw this book. Were you aware, because of the relationship you had with the former head of state, were you aware that this book was being put together to be released at this particular time?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mana, for giving me this opportunity to speak about the autobiography by former military president Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida. I think some 4 years ago, I did a write-up on leadership. Someone called me and said, "Hey, are you Simon Reef?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Can you please wait for General IBB? He wants to speak with you." I said, "Wow, what is?" He said, "No, please wait on." So I waited for about 5 minutes or so. Then he came on the line and said, "Oh, is that Simon?" I said, "Yes." I said, "My name is Ibrahim Babangida." Well, we spoke for the first time. Subsequently, we continued with a telephone conversation. Later on, he granted me an opportunity to meet him in Mina. And let me tell you, I met him over 5 good times. Each of those times, I spent nothing less than 1.5 to 2 hours of interaction. Now, the simplicity of the man is what baffled me the most. He had this sharp intelligence that he could recall events from the past as if it happened yesterday. And he was seated. You could ask questions. At the time I was conversing with him, it gets to a time you simply think, oh, you are just talking to a friend. That is the disposition I found myself interacting with IBB. I asked him so many questions on so many issues, and he was very frank. Very, very frank. Now something got to me and said, hey, I think I can do something. Write a book, say what I know about this man, because I've consistently written on IBB since 2000. I went with the cuttings of no less than 27 full-page newspaper cuttings to tell him that he has always been an interesting
figure.
So, at the end of the day, when in the last 1 year, I spoke with him the last 1 or 2 years. This is the last time we spoke. Then suddenly, I had they wanted to launch a book. I was so happy because at least the man is coming out to tell his own story. So when on February 20, I was at the Transcorp Hilton, of course, and I saw people, so distinguished gathering. I said, I was happy that at the end of the day, you're going to say certain things. But of course, things have changed over time. IBB is almost equally loved. It's also hated. There are people that love him, and there are those that hate him.
Would you agree that the elites in this country love him based on the caliber of people that were at that?
The elites of this country are simply gunning for stomach infrastructure.
But he's not president, so what do they have to benefit?
Let me tell you, President Goodluck said something at that meeting. He said, the house of IBB is like a mecca of a sort. The movers and shakers of Nigeria must pay a visit. His hilltop mansion is like a shrine. He told you in that book, he may be out of service, but he's still active in service. He's met people. You go to IBB, Southerners, Northerners, who say whatever, he have people that are behind him solidly. Let me tell you why the issue of June 12 is causing a lot of problem. On the issue of, it's not only June 12 that he spoke about. But if you really want to nail IBB, was his handling of June 12. That is what people think. We've not asked ourselves, why is this man called president? Why did he adopt the title president? Simply to tell you that consultation was key. If there was anything he wanted to do, or he wanted to do, he consulted very widely. How did he survive 8 years in power? He had a dedicated man in Sani Abacha, who was not just only a friend, he was a brother. When Gideon Oka shot his way to terminate him, Abacha was there. Vasa came, so many other coups came. Abacha held the military grip. He held them very well. IBB knew, you see, you have to look at the history of the man. If you go back to his birth when he was growing, he was a born leader. He believed strongly in friendship. If he said, Mana, you are my brother, you are my friend, he will lay down his life for you. There are instances of, in the course of when you read that, there's a time when he was in school, what he gained as a prize, he takes it, buys something and shared with his friends. So wherever IBB was, he was simply a natural leader. And that one, you can't deny him of that. But you see, his autobiography is exposing him. Those people who said IBB at 83 should come and bring his own account of what happened while in service, they were not being fair to him.
But what was the information revealed in the book is not really new. I think what we're talking about is accountability.
Exactly. That is what people are saying. See, I have read the front row account of Professor Humphrey Nwosu. And presently, as I'm speaking with you, I had an interaction with the distinguished Senator Zwingina, who was the Director General of the June 12, the Hope 93 Presidential Campaign Organization. He availed to me documents that are all-inspiring. There are things that you see that SDP ran one of the best presidential, campaign organization ever in the history of this country. He gave me all those documents. He led me into all what happened. That Abacha never wanted the transition to come to a conclusion. It's not a new thing. Humphrey was in his book said, if there was any man that was opposed to that, for NEC continuing to announce the result of the election, it was Abacha. There was a committee set up by Abacha. I said, who asked you to go and even conduct the election when ABN had gotten a court order to continue with, stopping the election? Remember, Humphrey said, the president said he should go ahead and conduct the election because there was a decree, I think Decree 10, that said no court adjudication can stop the conduct and the final conclusion of the elections. So why should NEC now why should they now agree to implement a court order that they feel they want and then refuse to implement another one? So all that IBB said on June 12th was not new. It has always been there. But man, let me be quick to say something. There are certain truths that should be heard, that should be declared, that should be said. It should not have come from IBB. Because IBB was an elephantine man. He was a giant, he was a symbol of so many things that happened in June 12th. People screaming, all these people screaming, hey, this and that. The Nigerian elite, the ruling elite, will always cash on anything that will put them on the front row of public opinion. So all this noise about Memoir, this and this, I will tell you, looking at through I have read the book, but again, I want to say something very quickly here. If IBB wanted to write a book, it was too small for me. And I mean, there was so much information he has in his disposal. It would have come and say, hey, let me say it all. But like an elder statesman,
somebody watching right now might feel you're downplaying the importance of that June 12th election.
June 12th election is a watershed in the history of this country. We've never bothered to ask ourselves, why did June 12th, why did it end the way it ended? Because there was a conspiracy between the ruling elite and the military. We had a situation where even the running mates to Abiola abandoned him and took a position with the military regime. Abiola as a person is somebody that is a lovable character. I come from the backwaters of Southern Kaduna. Let me tell you this story, and it will interest you. We had this particular bridge that every year people get drawn there. We try to reach out. How do we solve this problem? We went through Matthew Hassan Kuka, who happens to be one of our leading stars. This I'm telling stories of the 80s. He got Abiola, who came in. He never came. He just sent a journalist for the lunch. And when the man came, the money he brought was enough to construct a bridge. So 1993 came, June 12th, and our people said, it is payback time. We need to pay back to Abiola what he did for us in the 80s. They say, oh, it's a Muslim ticket. I say, whether it's a Muslim Hindu ticket, that is not the issue. This is a man that we love. Those people that know what happened during those periods is that the ruling elite were not united. And June 12, whether you like it or not, the involvement of certain organizations, and some people from the north will tell you, oh, it was turned into a Yoruba affair. No, it wasn't a Yoruba affair. But in the fight to revalidate that very poll, it was more of a Southwest affair. And let me tell you why democracy took that turn. In the North, we don't have this culture of protests. Democracy is strengthened when you go on protest. When the people tell you, hey, you can do this. But in the North, we lack that culture. And that is the problem.
So what do you say to IBB's comment that, I mean, he was looking at national security and that was why he annulled the election?
Well, when you talk of national security, you see, Mana,
do you feel that is justifiable?
It depends on what you say. You see, it will not. But again, he was a soldier. And he was, mind you, he was a personal friend to MK Abiola. Lamidi, in one of the interviews he granted to the Tribune, where he got very worried. Will IBB live or not live? He said, no. Abiola came in here. He said, he wanted to leave. He was very, very sincere. But the issue is that there were some dynamics. We're talking of military government. We're talking of people that were not interested for the transition program to terminate. He told you there were two chances. It's either he continued with the process and risks a coup that may lead to his death and that of Abiola. You know, we know some people who even came out that he said that if they ever come out, if Abiola is announced the president, they'll kill him the same day. And there was even this story I read somewhere that Abiola went to him, to IBB, said, you are my friend. We are Muslims. Go ahead. Announce it. If they kill you, you go. If we are killed, we go to heaven and continue with our friendship. What one is saying is that it's always very easy for you to be on the platform trying to justify the action or reaction of someone that is driving the ship.
So let's talk about seeking justice now, because there are some people that are saying that there are a lot of people that lost their lives as a result of that election that was annulled, and that he should be punished, sort of. You read in my, you listen in my opening, the group that is calling, for him to be, to be punished for these crimes. Yeah. So what do you say to that?
Well, there are certain things, because of the passage of time, it's always be difficult. If you want to punish IBB, how do you take into cognizance those who also contributed, who also, by their action or inaction, allowed such thing to happen? I commend Muhammad Buhari, who has given GCFR to Abiola. It was all clear, even before now, that the presumed winner was Abiola. And Buhari came in and gave him a GCFR, meaning that he was a former president. But again, let's also look at it. What about people like Kingibe, who was given GCON? It's like he ran with the hare, and then hunted with the hunts. So at the end of the day, you see, the unfortunate thing we have in this country is that people's mindset are already made up on certain issues. Whatever
so you're saying that Nigerians should not take it too hard on him.
No, he said you should be taking it as a national history. National history happens, things happen. Certain things may be done by government to assuage, like the suffering of people or what people have lost. It's all in the US that when someone is in prison 40, 50 years, they revisit the issue. And at the end of the day, they give out money to the man in millions of dollars just to say, hey, we are sorry for the injustice we did.
But he did not say he was sorry. He just took responsibility for that. There are some people who are close to the families of MK Abiola who are calling for him to apologize properly to the family. Do you think that is needful?
I have listened to some of the comments of the Abiolas on the autobiography. And one or two things I've read, I've not seen where they say he must come out and apologize.
No, it's not about them, but
it's not about them.
Do you think it is the right thing to do?
If that will assuage the pains of Nigerians over it, then I don't see anything wrong with that. But let me tell you, Abiola was a victim of the Nigerian system. When we talk of June 12, there are people who have deployed June 12 to also further their political ambition. There are people whose role currently will not have been realized without what happened in June 12, on the June 12 matter. So this idea that IBB must come out to apologize, oh, we're going to punish him, oh, we're going to do this, to me,
It's not justified.
Is
that
not
what you're
relevant.
saying?
It's not relevant.
It's not relevant.
It's relevant. I mean, it's not relevant as far as I'm concerned. And it's a personal
Imagine
mistake.
if your father was alive around that time,
Yes,
and then was a victim, of, the government's pushback against voices who were speaking against what had happened.
Yes.
How would you feel hearing someone like Buhari make that kind of statement if you're saying it's not relevant?
Buhari or
I mean IBB.
Okay.
Beg your pardon.
You see, what I'm saying is that the June 12 issue is one matter that will never be resolved. People will always have one end of it and push for it. And they may be doing that for their own interest. To me, that IBB has come and taking full responsibility, I think to me is even a synonym. It's a metaphor for apology. He said he regrets. And for somebody to come at 83 to regret over certain action, well, you can also understand it. To me, that would be enough. That is fair. But again, like I said, what has been done is that what he has said should make people, all those people who lost their lives, government should find out how do we compensate them. Do you understand? I like that. You should compensate people that were unjustly killed. Because it's very, very unfair that people were killed. People knew the results of the June 12 election, even when it was very, very clear that Abiola had won. So it's not just IBB coming to apologize. No, I call for those who were killed. They should be profiled. And government should do something to tell the family to assist the pains of those that were lost in that struggle.
Okay, so before I let you go, let's talk about preserving the legacy of MK Abiola.
Yes.
You read where, the senator talked about the fact that there should be a posthumous swearing-in celebration, have his picture, in the Aso Villa, in line with other presidents, who have ruled this country. Do you think that's a welcomed idea?
Well, I think to me, it's a welcome idea. I don't see anything wrong. Anything that will make this country get over this issue of June 12. Honestly, I'm in support of it. If you do a swearing in, like a posthumous swearing ceremony,
yes,
and have his picture adorn offices, there is nothing wrong. But the idea is we should be looking at the lessons learned from June 12.
Do you think we have learned those lessons?
We've not learned these lessons because the ruling elite, those things that made Nigeria to be divided, that led to the incapacity to realize the June 12, are still there.
Just to add one more thing, on our morning show on Monday, we had Sowore, a former presidential aspirant, talk about the fact that the likes of Tinubu and so many elites who were present at that book launch, were part of those who sabotaged MK Abiola and sided with IBB. What do you make to that comments from someone like Sowore?
Well, were they aware that there was a deal between Abiola and Abacha to overthrow the ING led by Ernest Shonekon so that they will resolve it? And I think Tony Anini, in his own biography, said Abiola simply abandoned them and felt he had to go and strike an agreement, a pact with Abacha. Of course, after striking the pact, it was Dia, Oladipo Dia, that was expected to be a guarantor of that deal. His presence there, assured the Abiola team. One thing you should note, that in the fight to revalidate the June 12 election, the political class fell out with Abiola at a certain goal. And it was the pro-democracy group that were not versed in the dialectics of the power game and going for screaming headlines, advocacy. That was not enough. That didn't prove enough. Because the military were not willing to hand over power. Abacha wanted to continue, and there was nothing he could do. So by the time he discovered that, hey, he had been taken in for the ride, he came back in 1992 in September or so, and declare himself president-elect. From there, we saw what we saw. So, but what one is saying here is that the conspiracy of the ruling elite, to me, is the most determinant factor that led to what played out in that period.
But you can't blame them, because that seems to be the biggest takeaway.
It should be the biggest thing, but we have seen that those people who were part of
we've got to go, Mr. Simon.
The same people that we are talking about.
We'll have you back on the show to talk about this. But we've got to go.
This country and then move forward. We need those people who died, those people that were killed. Government should do something about it. It's not just a Biola, it's not about people.
All right.
And Nigerians suffer.
All right. Thank you so much for your thoughts again. But we've got to go. We're having our next conversation coming up right after this, where we will focus on the relevance of CSOs and NGOs. Quite an interesting conversation. Don't miss out. We'll be right back.
What makes the political system what it is today? What are the recurring issues?
Order.
The tussle for power.
An extremely problematic area.
The tension. The instability of the system. Join Ellen 24/7 as we take you inside the local and international political arena in the world of politics.
Apologize for saying that I was corrupt.
I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
Watch politics now on Ellen 24/7.
Don't miss Politics Now on Ellen 24/7.
Thanks for staying with us on the show. This time around, we're focusing on the relevance of CSOs and NGOs. Let's give you a rundown of our talking points. First, we'll look at allegations of terrorism that is threatening the relevance of CSOs and NGOs, and also threat to fund how they can tackle USAID exit. And also, we'll talk about the need for transparency and regulation. Our guest today on the program is no stranger to this show. Arome Again is a public policy analyst, an experienced development professional, and has worked in NGOs, think tanks, CSOs, and youth movements, and also managed large consortiums of CSOs, youth groups, and media organizations in Africa. Arome, so good to have you on the show today. It's been quite a while.
Yeah, it's quite a while.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Mona.
All right, so a civil society organization or non-governmental organization, and rather, because they're two different things, both play a crucial role in society by acting as independent entities that advocate for social change. They monitor government actions, provide essential services to communities, and raise awareness on critical issues, often focusing on areas where the government might not be adequately addressing needs, particularly for marginalized groups, essentially acting as a bridge between the public and the government to promote transparency and accountability. So here are some of the key roles that CSOs and NGOs claim to be playing. Advocacy and lobbying. They actively campaign for policy changes on issues like human rights, environmental protection, health, education, and the list goes on and on. Then community development by delivering essential services like healthcare, education, and livelihood training directly to communities. Then you talk of monitoring and accountabilities. They can monitor government activities and programs to ensure transparency, identify corruption, and hold authorities accountable. You talk of capacity building, helping to empower communities by providing training and education on their rights and enable them to actively participate in decision-making processes. Then there is research and data collection, and of course, public awareness raising through campaigns, media engagement, and community outreaches. CSOs and NGOs educate the public about important issues and also mobilize citizen participation. Now, let's not forget that U.S. Congressman Scott Perry has said in an allegation that United's Agency for International Development funded terrorist organizations, including Boko Haram. Now, Perry is a Republican representing Pennsylvania who made the claim during the inaugural hearing of the Subcommittee on Delivering on Government Efficiency. And in response, the United States Ambassador to Nigeria, Richard Mills, has dismissed the allegations that the United States USAID agency funds Boko Haram and other terrorist organizations. Now, Richard Mills, who met with members of the Nigerian Governors Forum in Abuja recently, said there was no evidence to back up that allegation. So that's just one of the allegations from the U.S. government. And then away from that, recently, a coalition of some civil society organizations in the country have also rejected allegations made by an unnamed former air officer commanding the Nigerian Air Force, who claims that NGOs are aiding terrorism in the country. They described these accusations published in the Vanguard newspaper on the 16th of January as baseless and inflammatory. They asserted that these allegations attempt to shift blame from systemic failures that allow Nigeria to terrorism, rather, to thrive in Nigeria. And then when you move away from terrorism allegations, let's talk about funding. There seems to be a threat to that, especially in the Trump era, which could challenge CSOs and NGOs. And the hypothetical closure of USAID would have far-reaching consequences for global development and humanitarian efforts. Now, as one of the largest providers of foreign assistance, USAID plays a crucial role in addressing urgent issues such as poverty alleviation, health crisis, and disaster response. Without its support, millions of individuals in developing countries could face dire consequences, including increased mortality rates from preventable diseases, heightened food insecurity, and diminished access to education and economic opportunities. And additionally, the closure could also exacerbate geopolitical tensions as nations vying for influence in developing nations may pursue their agendas without the stabilizing presence of the U.S. aid. So let's come back home to Nigeria. Nigeria relies heavily on foreign aid from health interventions, and the USAID funding freeze threatens maternal health, immunization, and epidemic preparedness. And the funds also include WASH programs and PEPFAR's HIV initiatives. And in response, the Federal Executive Council approved 1.07 billion for healthcare reforms and 4.8 billion for HIV treatment. Now, within the last decade, apart from terrorism allegations and then funding challenges that could affect the work that CSO and NGOs do, the Nigerian National Assembly has made attempts severally at creating some form of regulatory frameworks for non-governmental organizations in the country. And some questions then come to mind. Why is the legislative arm of government insistent on creating a law to regulate the NGO sector? Will such a law not contradict the constitutional right to freedom of association? And can there be an inference that the sector is going above existing laws and thus needs to be regulated? Has the time not yet come for the NGO sector to begin self-regulations as being forcefully regulated? Of course, Arame is with us in the studio. Thank you so much for being with us. Quite an introduction. So let me...
That's an elaborate
So what do you want to start with unpacking? So let's start from the allegations of terrorism. What is the relationship that is in the media? I know it's a narrative. We're not talking about, okay, this is actually what's happening, because the ambassador to the U.S. government has denied some of those claims made by that Republican senator. Then also the Nigerian army too. There's been pushback from the CSOs and NGOs against that narrative. But is there a form of truth as someone who, thrives in this sector?
Yeah, well, I just want to begin from the point that civil society organizations and the non-profit generally, let me just put them together. The non-profit generally, looking at civil society, media, the NGOs,
Yeah.
international and both national organizations, including the churches, the mosque, and other affiliates of, that are within the family of the non-profit, have done so much in sustaining Nigeria. And I'm going to speak from the point of Nigeria, but partly I might talk about some countries around Africa, but I'm going to stay on Nigeria basically. We have done a lot of things to sustain this country of ours, our motherland, our Africa. We have done a lot, beginning from the fight against colonialism, beginning from the fight against the military era, the military administrations, the quest for democratic rule, and the transition to democracy. Now, civil society has done so well in sustaining this country, looking at initiating reforms, bringing ideas forth that advance national development and national growth. So civil society has done pretty well a lot of things. Sustaining peace. When we look at sustaining peace as well, civil society has done a great, huge work around that. And I'll point to one that I love so much. The Imam and Pastor story in Kaduna is one that has, that allowed interfaith dialogue in Kaduna State, resolving, the backlash of the Zango Katab crisis and some other little skirmishes of crisis in Kaduna State and some other part of Nigeria. We see we are seeing the work they are doing in places like Jos. We are seeing the work they are doing in other places across the country. There was a period that when in Ibadan talking to the farmers and the community, and we were looking at bringing them together to to foster the culture of peace and cohesion between the farmer and the herders in Ibarakpa community in Ibadan. That's in your state. These are great work that the civil society have been putting in terms of sustaining Nigeria, for example. But having said that, that is not to say that there are little bit of issues here and there. And you will also know we are human beings. Civil society is a space that is being occupied by human beings, right? So where you have a large pool of people coming together, you will definitely see some few strands of mistakes here and there. So saying there is an allegation that civil society organizations are sponsoring terrorism and all of that, it might not be totally unfounded. It could be that there are people within the civil society organizations, one or two of them, that have been part of this. Now, having said that, this is not also to forget the fact that knowledge is advancing, people are advancing, things are changing. Now, the terrorist group are also understanding, they are having a deep understanding of the social economy landscape of every territory that they are operating. They also understand what it means to also set up non-profit organizations to also field their agendas. And we have seen that happening here and there.
So it's easy for anyone to get registered and then come into this space.
Come into this space in order to drive their agenda. So what we should be looking at... Who
is regulating that?
That is the point. That is where we should be looking at. Now, it is a responsibility of the government. The government should not be crying foul. It's the responsibility of the government to regulate, to check the people that are coming in to register different organizations, to understand their affiliation with any of these terrorist groups. So when the government have not done that, the government should not take it back to the civil society that it is a civil society that are doing it. Anyone could stand up to register a company. Anyone could stand up to register an organization tomorrow, set up his board, and technically he's supporting the agenda of a terrorist group. It could be in any of these countries where terrorism thrive. It could be ISWAP, it could be ISIS, it could be any of them. So the thing is, government should put up a regulatory mechanism, a monitoring mechanism to also check the people that are coming to register some of these civil society platforms, some of these non-governmental organizations, so that we don't have this. It's not, you can't say that, you can't tell me, for example, that I'm sponsoring terrorism. Why? Because I am putting my life on the line to ensure that we have a good Nigeria. So doing that, I will not stand here to accept that, yeah, it's the civil society.
So you're saying government should actually publish names of those people who are actually doing that?
During the Buhari era, we heard that some persons were fingered in the whole sponsorship for Boko Haram and terrorism activities in Nigeria. We've been waiting for the government to publish the name of those people. The government have not published the name of those people. When they publish the name of these people, of these persons that are fingered in that particular allocation, so you will see that there are people from people who, you know, who say they are self-acclaimed civil society practitioners that are part of them, but they are not, you know, in any way subscribing to the ethics and the principles that the civil society organizations, you know, hold so dear. So the government should actually publish them. We have come too far from this blame game, come too far from this allegation thing. It's time to face the hard truth. The government should come out so open, so clean. These are the name of the persons that are sponsoring this. These are the civil society organizations that are sponsoring terrorism in Nigeria. These are what they are doing. Then we know that yes, this person is doing, this person is doing. Then we can also come out to say, oh, he's not part of the civil society forum, because the civil society also have different forums at different levels. There's a Nigerian network of non-governmental organizations, for example. And civil society organizations are member of this umbrella body. So that umbrella body could come out to say, this person you're saying is not a member of the civil society platform. So I think the government have a responsibility, and they owe us that duty of care to publish this name of the persons that they have, you know, suspected that are sponsoring terrorism, that are member of any civil society organizations that they know. I think that's what the government should be doing.
Now, over the last few years, we've seen the attempts by the Nigerian Senate to put up a bill to regulate civil society organizations.
Yeah.
So how do you separate, you know, like how do you properly regulate the CSOs and NGOs without having a bill that kinds of, you know, limits what they can be able to do?
Now, it's not the bill that is the question. It's the content of the bill. Do
you have a problem with the bill?
I don't have a problem with the bill, because even in developed countries, there are regulations. For example,
protesting at the National Assembly as at when, you know, it was in the height of its call for it to be put forward.
Let's go back to what I said when you asked this question. It is not the bill that is the problem. The content of the bill. The content of the bill is the problem. Now, in the United Kingdom, they have the Charity Act, which is an act put together by the UK government to actually, both in the UK and Wales, to actually legislate the charity space. Now, the charity space in the Charity Act is a bill that seeks to regulate non-profit organizations, be it community interest group, be it what we call the civil society platform, be it non-governmental organization, and all of that fall within that particular charity space. So there is a particular legislation in the UK that seeks to oversee the activities of these people, going down to, you know, and that regulations also look at issues around tax, for example, tax exemptions for civil society platform, and other issues that have to do with, you know, managing, having effective civil society organizations. That is a fourth realm of this governance system that checkmate the activity of the government. Now, the content of the bill is what is a question. Now, when you are putting up a bill that seeks to pry into my own privacy, into an individual privacy, then there is a problem. So the content of the bill is what we should be interrogating, not the bill. Not the bill. So the bill it's a legislation. You know, if you put up a bill, and we civil society organization has seen that, okay, you are saying that for every 5 naira that is coming in, you are exempted from tax. However, every person that is employed in your organization will pay XYZ tax, and there should be a tax rebate for even people that are working within the civil society space. In Germany, for example, the taxes they take from civil society organizations at the end of the year is being brought back to the civil society organization to further the work they are doing. Do we have that in Nigeria? Do we have such system put in place? Now, this particular bill that is being sponsored in the National Assembly is the bill seeking to ensure that things as this are done. It should not be a bill that is looking forward to restricting the space. It shouldn't be a bill that is seeking to stop me from speaking my mind as a person. Right now, if you say something so hard against the government, if you hold government accountable, they come after you. These are the things that we should be interrogating.
Okay.
Not necessarily not the bill, but the content of the bill.
I hear you, Arome. Now let's talk about funding. That seems to be threatened in the Trump world. I mean, this is something that we all envisaged. We knew it was not going to be business as usual when Trump came into office. So now USAID is actually on pause at the moment. Some of your brothers and sisters, I'm sure you know them.
Including myself.
Okay, you're affected. Oh, interesting.
Yes, I am affected.
So what's the way forward in all of this? And how does this bring about transparency, which is something I know you're very passionate about, because you're passionate about transparency in your sector. And some of the revelations by Trump's government, most especially with regards to, you know, the USAID, has brought a lot of revelations. I mean, like money's being spent to sponsor LGBTQ agendas in some countries and the like. So when you look at some of this, what does this challenge, or how is this a challenge for you to thrive?
This is an interesting question because one, the cap, the suspension on the USAID fund and the whole Trumpify or Trump era conversations about restricting fund for international development is something that is very interesting for Africa. I am very, very happy about it. And why am I happy about it? Yes, there are people in the civil society space that will be questioning my position, because people should be. Some persons will say, you are a benefactor, you are part of the beneficiary of this particular fund. Why are you saying when they cut this fund, you are happy about it?
And do we call?
I'm happy about it.
You know, when Elon Musk, you know, was made to chair the DOGE Department of Efficiency for United States, there were many Africans who were tagging Elon Musk and telling him, Elon Musk, we've not seen the benefits of these monies that your country is pushing out to Africa.
So that is bringing me back to a conversation. Sometime in 2023, I did a particular research on aid, the efficiency of aid coming into development country. And I discovered, I read a whole lot of literatures from the Pew Institute in the United States of America to other highly renowned research and development think tank in the US. And I discovered that out of every $1 million that comes to Africa, about 2 million or 2.5 million US dollar goes back to the United States of America. For example, when we are giving money to buy for health interventions, we are made to still buy the Pfizer and the Johnson & Johnson product. Why don't we do it to encourage indigenous pharmaceutical company? Why don't we do it to promote our own product in Nigeria? Yes, Africans are good. Nigerians are intelligent. We see Nigerians everywhere, scattered everywhere, in medical research institute, in scientific research institute, in different research institute, turning out very good research product everywhere around the world. Yet, we don't have a thriving pharmaceutical company that we can fall back to. So why are you saying when you give us a grant, we must buy from the Johnson & Johnson and the Pfizer, who are the one taking the large shares of the consultancy? The consultancy are within the space. I know this is going to come with a little bit of heat from some people, but truth be told, right? For me, this is time for Africa to start thinking, how can we maximize the resources that is within Africa to also advance the African development? We are becoming irresponsible in Africa. Our government is becoming irresponsible. So if we continue this, there will not be a future to hand over to the children that are coming. So the Trump cutting down on development on the USAID fund is a welcome development if only Africa can begin to think on looking away from the negative effects of what Trump had done to seeing their opportunity and the advantage that has created for us in itself by looking within Africa to resource mobilize, looking to talk to the philanthropists. Africa has a culture
Are you
of
seeing
philanthropy.
that happening at the moment?
That is
Just
happening.
in
There are
1 minute.
conversations. There are conversations at different fora
Because
around
I said that to
around
say
resource mobilizing within Africa.
I don't know if you follow the
development.
developments from the last African Union summit. I mean, where conversation seems to base on reparations and all of that. So what's your response to that dynamic?
Now, reparation or no reparation, Africa would definitely... Now, I want us to separate what our leaders go to Addis Ababa to do every year from what we as Africans should do to advance the cause of Africa. If we rely on what these men and women go to Addis Ababa to do, we will never take a step forward in Africa. That's number one. Number two, sometimes these men go there to push their agenda, to push their own selfish leadership agenda, not because they want to advance the cause of Africa. So we need to put that at the back of our mind. So Africans are having conversations around how can we maximize the opportunity. I was in the particular organizations just recently, sometime last week, and the leadership of the organizations was having a conversations about setting up, building a conversations around bringing philanthropists within the African continent together to also see how to talk to them, to bring in resources to financing the cause of girl child in Nigeria and other part of Africa. These are conversations that are Africans, real Africans are having, not the ones that go to Addis Ababa to, for a ceremony. And after the ceremony, they sign documents and then come back with them with our face. That's the same
circle
so it is
repeats
Africans, the
itself
same
again.
circle. So the Africans that are hardworking, the Africans are the trenches, the Africans that are on the street on the daily basis, having conversation on how we advance the cause of development within our context, and having these conversations currently. And it's something that most of us wants to push this conversation to a conclusive end, that Africa should bring in money to support the cause of Africa. Let me not hear, this is not time for somebody in Maiduguri to take about £1 million to support a school in the United Kingdom. This is not a time for somebody from Lagos to take about £1 billion to give it to an international organization that is headquartered in the US or in the UK to support the cause of a child education. This is time for us to begin to look at how can our private sector organizations, how can the philanthropists and the individual, high network individual in the country begin to support the cause of Africans' development. And that is one of the things.
Our time is up. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you very much, Mona, for having me.
All right, folks at home, we don't have enough time, but I'm sure you've enjoyed the conversation today. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to follow up our developments around the topics that we have discussed today. Once again, my name is Mono Balagbobo. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.